Ew.
Here he is.
What's
Daddy.
going on?
Just fucking living the dream, my man. Starting with you.
Good, mate. Just away up in the hills of Byron Bay.
Are you at Byron at the moment?
Yeah, just inland from Byron, about 40 minutes up in the hinterland.
What's happening out there?
3-day ceremony.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Just you and Scotty, you and the family. What's the dynamic?
No, just so every time I step into ceremony, I've had a few in exemptions where I've brought someone to my house,
Yeah,
but know the person deeply enough to trust them in that space. But
yeah,
and this one wasn't to do with that, but more of let's create a neutral environment where we can be in the space just completely segregated from anything else and just be in the moment. So a very
yeah.
close friend of mine and I took our time to come up here and be at this place for 3 days.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Um, the I used to. I want to go back to what we're talking about, but I just saw your ears. Are you stretching your ears, or are they just different spaces? Like, are they
Different
bigger?
spaces.
Right, it looks bigger. The stretch looks bigger.
Yeah, because usually I've just got the black ones that sit
Oh,
in.
the solid wood ones.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
so of late I've been doing a lot of energetic work and my body
yeah,
runs off specific lines. And if I don't ground well enough, the energy can't flow out my body. And
yeah.
the wood blocks it, especially around my jaw, because I get a lot of clenching of the jaw when energy's built
Wow.
up. And so opening them up allows energy to flow.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, you're away. Even like I imagine there's like a fair bit of thought that goes into like the accommodation that you're going to pick for them 3 days. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, man. I like to pick something that's, not isolated, but away from major towns, major cities, usually on a property where we can walk around and ground on land.
Yeah.
And then if the dwelling is part of a property, how far that is away from the main house, because energy, like external energy, impacts the space.
Yeah.
If there's animals, kids, whatever running around, it
Even
really
a
impacts the
fucking
space.
car, like you hear a fucking car, like just like something, right?
Massively, man. And that's a big impact, because the work is very, very sacred. Like, people are going through a very vulnerable transformation.
Yeah.
And that if there's distraction, if there's external variables that are impacting, it can really interfere with the process itself.
So it's a 3 day thing, or it's a 1 day thing with a day either side.
3-day thing. So the whole 3 days is strategically based around the whole transformation. So we may
Yeah.
drop in 2 or 3 times. One may be a micro, one macro, maybe 2 macros, and then the final days more of a micro as well. And the way that I work, so I do single days and I do 3 days. Single
Yeah. And
days
is
are
it all is it psilocybin? Is it like what is it?
depends on the person and what their energy is really calling for. Like, I predominantly work with psilocybin right now,
Yeah.
but can facilitate with MDMA, ketamine, ayahuasca, wachuma, all the things. But it's just like reading and connecting to the human, where they're at in life, what their intentions are, and then identifying which medicine is going to be calling to that person's transformation.
Yeah, it's like a prescription almost, right? It's like, hey, like if you go to if you're like, hey, these are my symptoms, this is what I want to try to get out, or this is what I need help with, and then you fucking wrangle up that concoction and you go through that ceremony. I'd imagine. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
But like for
um,
some people, they may not have worked with plant-based medicines or psychedelics before. And so to
yeah,
drop them in on an ayahuasca journey can be quite intense and oftentimes not needed,
yeah,
you know. For me,
and
I worked with psilocybin first on my own and then went to ayahuasca and
yeah,
then had a turn my life around, instantly turn my life around. But I was in the space of transformation where I was ready to accept all responsibility of my life
yeah,
and ready to do the work.
yeah. When you're doing like, is there like a lead up? Like I imagine there's like a lead up towards like this 3 days or whatever 3 days, right? Like, is there like a best practice, like you don't use alcohol for 3 months? Is it that you fucking don't eat meat or you only eat meat? Like, is there certain things that help that ceremony?
Definitely, man. So that's called the dieta, and it's like the diet, right? Like the
Yeah,
Peruvians call it the diet. And if you went to the jungle and were sitting with shamans in the jungle, you'd spend 2 weeks prior on dieta, and then you'd get there for 3 days and go through a specific plant-based diet. So they'll utilize different plants to work with the medicine that they're using. But for me here, I go with a practice of 7 to 14 days, depending on the person's that like lifestyle diet at that point in time. And we will remove meat, caffeine, alcohol, tobacco, sex, even we remove that
yeah,
as well. And we focus on mainly organic plant-based diet with specific protocols leading into the ceremony as well.
yeah. Interesting. So when you sort of started playing around, was that like microdosing psilocybin by yourself in your own house, like just testing and trialing it? Is that what you're doing?
I went all in. So
Yeah.
I was like at the darkest moment of my life. Like I
What
was
year was this? How long ago?
2000, and so I've been studying it for 3 years and then decided to drop in 2018. I decided to
Yeah,
drop myself in,
yeah,
and I owned and ran a gym in West Sydney,
yeah,
and I connected with this specific human being who got me the ability to communicate with this tribe here in Australia from Northern Rivers to do ayahuasca. And while I was connecting with this person, they said, "Have you tried psilocybin?" And I'd been studying. I was like, "No, I haven't, but I'm
yeah,
open to it." And
yeah,
they supported me, got me some medicine. And then one day I was sitting in the gym and I was just like, I was cleaning it and I was just so unhappy, man. I was so
yeah,
depressed, suicidal tendencies. And I was like, okay, now's the time. Like I'm going to
yeah,
drop in. So I closed the windows, I closed the blinds, I put music on, put the incense on. I sat in the middle of the gym. I took my
wow,
dose and then I was just in.
wow.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's so cool. And that was, so it was almost like whilst there was planning and there was a lot of thought and energy towards it, it was like an impulsive, like the act of it, it was like, fuck it, it's now.
Man, I was like, I had been to so many like sessions with therapists. I'd been in and out of medical for the 2 years prior to that because I was medically discharged from the military. So I was going through an assessment as a veteran. I'd spent, in 1 year, I'd spent 30 plus hours in an MRI machine going in
Yeah,
and out,
wow.
in and out, in and out. And then therapists where, DVA supplied me with 3 specific therapists. The first one didn't resonate. I said, I don't want to continue this. I want to go to someone else. Second one was the same. And then the third one was this retired guy. He was like, look, this is the first session. He goes, sit down. He whips out a sandwich. He started eating his sandwich. He's like spilling it all over the joint. He's like, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm retiring in 3 weeks. So tell me what you want, but like
Wow,
whatever. And I'm just like, you fucking kidding me? And I'm like, look, I'll be
wow.
honest with you. I'm not going to open up to you. I'm not
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
open up to you. And
yeah,
so it was like, what else? And I was so confident with what I'd been researching and studying and who I was studying with. And I asked their advice as well, the people I'd been studying with. I'm like, look, am I safe enough to do this? And they're like,
yeah,
how brave are you to lean into your shadows? And I said,
yeah,
well, I'm in the darkest moment of my life. It's now or
yeah,
nothing. And they're
yeah,
like, well, do
yeah.
it. Do it.
So did you do ayahuasca before you done psilocybin, or what way was that?
Psilocybin first, then
Yeah,
ayahuasca.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then so after you tried that, you had like an amazing, like it was, what was it that was so good about it? Was it clarity thereafter, or was it like security in yourself to know that there was more than you just, being unhappy in fucking Western Sydney at a gym? What was it?
Psilocybin opened my awareness. It like reminded me of the beauty of life itself.
Yeah,
And then also reminded me that the season I was going through was a season. It wasn't long term. And I had absolute control and responsibility of who I was and what I was doing.
yeah.
So after I had that clarity, and I'd only
So
done the
when you
one
say
session of
that,
psilocybin.
like it was like when you had like, so what it was like, you were aware of that, you were in that position because of your previous actions, and it was also up to you to dig yourself out. Is that what you kind of mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then once
Were
I
you blaming people? Were you like, fuck, this isn't fair, that isn't fair, why me, kind of?
not so much the why me or blaming people, but I had a lot of resentment and animosity to specific people and things that were happening in my life at that time.
Yeah.
And definitely victim mindset, not necessarily blaming or passing off blame, but very much like victim mindset, like
It's not fair.
it's not fair. Why the fuck am I going through this? Like Cass and I were behind like 2 months of rent. We
Yeah.
were broke as fuck because I wasn't earning anything. I just
Yeah.
opened this gym. We just had bills, so she had to go back to work and provide a revenue for our household. I was looking after Bill while I was running the gym, so I'd take him to the gym, and he was like not coping. And
Yeah.
I was going through the divorce
Yeah.
officially. I was separated from my other children, like 50-50. So I was separated 50% of the time. I was struggling with in my family at the time because Cass and I weren't really being received in my family.
Yeah.
And then some friends, like, because I'd left the military, it was my family. And when I left, everybody just smoke bombed, man. Like
Yeah.
nobody hung around. And so I was really struggling with the identity shift and the
Yeah.
transition
Yeah. Yeah.
out. And so, yeah, getting that clarity of like, hey, well, yeah, this is a season. It's fucking
Yeah.
shit, but you're in control. You're the one that needs to change this. And
Yeah.
then divine intervention, the ayahuasca ceremony popped up. It was like 4 days up in the Blue Mountains, 3 days with ayahuasca. And I remember the first night I sat with it, I was just like, oh, right.
Wow.
I'm creating this turmoil and I'm the one that can fix it.
Wow. What can you remember like your first like when you first learned about psilocybin or ayahuasca? Can you remember what it was? Like was it something you read, or was it something that someone said? And the reason
It
why
was,
I ask that is because I remember the first time I ever heard of ayahuasca, which was about what are we now? It was about 8 years ago or 9 years ago. I heard it on a podcast that Aubrey
yeah.
Marcus was on, and I was like, it was when they were talking about it. I was in a coal mine, like I was working in the mines, and
Yeah.
I heard it, and I can't remember. It wasn't Aubrey's podcast; it was someone else's podcast. But they were interviewing a chick that used to work for CNN that fucking quit a job and went to Peru, done a ceremony, and fucking changed her life. And I was
Yeah.
like, I was so mind blown with the concept, not only of like what ayahuasca was as like their medicine itself, but I was really blown away with how open and honest these guys were being on like a public forum, because even podcasts weren't that big then. This is like, it might have been, yeah, like nearly 10 years ago. So it's like
Yeah.
podcasts weren't a thing. It's like, wow, these guys are being very open, honest, vulnerable about how they're doing drugs. That's how I perceived it. It was like, wow, these guys are doing fucking gnarly drugs and telling stories about it. But it was also like a weird thing because these were very situationally status, like they had high status. She had like a really high paying job on CNN and blah, 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 blah. So that was like my first understanding of it. And yeah, what was yours? Like, how did you learn about it initially?
It first popped up on podcasts for me too. So
Yeah.
a buddy of mine, Mike Bledsoe, used to run a podcast called Barbell Shrugged. And
Yeah.
it was like the
I used to listen to
number
that.
one.
I
Yeah.
used to
So,
listen, bro. It was like the first, so that it was, I was introduced to that podcast. It was that and Rogan that introduced me to podcast, full
me
stop.
too.
Like, yeah,
Me too.
yeah. It
So
was a great
being in the
podcast.
strength and conditioning industry, I resonated with Barbell Shrugged and
Yeah.
Mike and the crew. And Mike was talking about it. This was like maybe 8 or 9 years ago. Mike was talking about it. And I was like, what is this thing? And then at that time, I was studying human behavior psychology. And I was reading a lot of Graham Hancock's books.
Yeah.
And then Graham was talking about it as well. And he was referring to it. There was some images and literature that were written on the pillars of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how psilocybin was found on the pillars, or at least the mushroom symbol was found on the pillars. And I'd heard it on Mike's podcast, and then listening to Mike, I started listening to Aubrey. Listening to Aubrey, I started listening to Rogan, and then I started studying with Paul Chek, and these conversations were happening more and more and more. And then ayahuasca popped up, and then I was like, okay, like I'm gonna take some time to really study what these medicines are, where they come from, what they've been utilized for. And I wasn't ready to go to the jungle. It was super intimidating to me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
And as a way to like bridge the gap, the universe was like, here you go, Will, here's someone in Australia you can go and sit with. And the ayahuasca who ran the ceremony in Australia had been in Peru for 10 years studying with the Santo Daime Church.
Yeah.
And so she'd been immersed in it. And so I trusted that her wisdom and experience was what it was. And I'd heard a lot about her as well. So I was trusting in that. And it's funny because Mike and I reconnected after my ayahuasca ceremony, and I joined the Strong Coach when he turned it to the Strong Coach.
Yeah.
And I was a student for a year and then became the facilitator for breathwork and nervous system regulation inside of the Strong Coach. And then not last year before, I went to the Strong Coach Summit and I facilitated and spoke there as a keynote speaker.
Wow. Thanks.
And I remember the first night I got to meet Mike in the flesh. He come up to me and he's like, because we've been connecting and I told him all the stories and I'm just like, bro, you fucking changed my life. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, he goes, that your story's not uncommon because mine was very, very similar. And then last year before the run, he reached out to me after the summit. He's like, hey, well, I'm going to shoot a documentary in Peru with one of the veteran organizations. We're doing an ayahuasca documentary. Can you send me some of your breathwork stuff? Because we're going to do it while we're there. And it really grounded the cycle. Like it allowed my hero's journey to complete itself so that I could move on to the next chapter.
Yeah.
And that's when I started stepping more into being like, all right, I know my shit. I'm confident with my shit. I've been working with this shit for a while now. I don't know it all. I'm always a student. And I think that's the main piece that a lot of facilitators miss, is that like we're students all the time. Every ceremony I ever run, I'm still learning because every human's different. And so
I actually think it's not even just in that space, right? That's in business, that's in fatherhood, that's in like people that think that they know it all are just like, they shut themselves off for growth. And I think that's also what stops people from, like, even for you, is like when Mike reached out to you and said, hey, Will, can I have basically your IP to use? You're like, oh, wow, like this person that I respect, like sees value in what I've put together on my work. Is like, maybe I can help more people, or maybe that I have now the confidence to go and do this. And I think that's what happens. What stops people from starting businesses is because they're like, I don't know enough, therefore I need to keep learning. It's like, no. Just fucking use what you do know and then learn it all along the way, because we'll never be like, because you'll never be like, oh yeah, cool, I know all about businesses now, I can go and start a business. That's not how it works.
Nah, it's so dynamic, man. Like it's not a straight line. Like I say this all the time, like healing is not a straight line. You know, we don't heal in a straight line. And every moment I get to be present in the learning, like being a student, a white belt mentality is where the growth is. You know, even sitting with Mike in ceremony while I was in Texas, like I remember connecting with him and he come out and he's just like, and I was facilitating, he's just like, fuck man, like I've done some breath work before. I've been with some of the best in the world, because he's good networking. He's like, I've been with some of the best in the world, but like I fucking didn't know I could do that. You know, I didn't know that was accessible. And so that really triggered the momentum for me of being like, oh shit, like you remove imposter syndrome. It's like, you just got to start, man. Like you just got to start and do the thing.
Yeah. Cause that's it. Like when you say that, it's like, and again, it's by, if you're worried about what other people perceive you or how they perceive you, then you'll never fucking do anything, right? Because like, imagine if you start posting some breathwork stuff on Instagram and people are like, who the fuck do you think you are? Wim Hof, look at this cunt thinks he's Wim Hof. It's like everyone just goes to that. Same as like, you could start, talking about plant medicine. It's like, oh, who the fuck's this guy think he is? Aubrey Marcus? It's like, but again, like after time when you do that, you build like this reputation and resume of you are that guy, and you can, just because like Wim Hof is Wim Hof, Aubrey's like, everyone's different. You might play in the same space, but you will bring things that them other guys don't, and vice versa.
Man, that is so close to home, because like it's been 2 weeks since I decided to be like, all right, I'm going to talk about this shit publicly. I'm going to start talking, because I was inspired by Aubrey and Mike and Joe. Like they started talking about these things, which brought it online. Like these people paved the way for people to start talking about and experiencing it. And it's even like, if you looked at the statistics, people going to Peru for ayahuasca like increased after Joe started talking about it. And then the
Yeah.
more that Aubrey spoke about it, like all the retreats in Peru were like booked out for years, you know, because
Wow.
people are like, oh, sweet. So 2 weeks. And I've had trolls drop
Yeah,
in
of
and they're
course.
like, what the fuck? But man, for me, it's not that. It's one modality out of many modalities that can improve mental health. And that's
Yeah.
the thing I'm so driven for, is improving the narrative of mental health. Now, if you come to one of my retreats, the way we do things may be similar to other retreats you've been to, but the focus is on mental health. And that is connecting with human beings, you know, connecting to community, connecting back to self, like finding who we are, what's got us stuck, how we can improve that we're absolutely responsible for who we are, and then moving through that with these techniques or modalities. And it's not always psychedelics or plant medicines, although the potential for greater health does lie in that space.
Yeah.
The fear around that is, though, that people have this concept that they are drugs or they're illegal or all the things. And that's all well and good until you're in the space and you've done the work and you're like, these things fucking changed my life.
And I think too, to also, like, if that person that is contemplating receiving that medicine isn't like that, maybe their diet is completely fucked, maybe they're an alcoholic, maybe they're not really ready to experience it or change like that, like you're not ready for it yet, right? Because then they do drop in and they fucking freak out, and then it's like, that's fucking poison. Do not do that thing. It didn't fucking work for me. It's like, well, you weren't ready for it, or you weren't in a position. It's like when I quit smoking, I used to smoke for 10 years, man. So when I was like 16 to like fucking 23, or probably like 4, not quite 10 years. And I fucking had enough one day. I'm like, this is I'm over this. My wife didn't smoke. She hated it and was controlling my life. And I felt like a fucking moron. And then it was on I rang a hit. I tried to stop cold turkey. I'd done fucking Champex, all the medicine, blah, 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 blah. And always went back to it. And one day I was like, fuck it, I've had enough. I rang a fucking, what are they called? They put you under.
Hypnotherapist?
Yeah. I rang a I got hypnotized. And the only appointment I can get was on the 17th of May, which was my birthday. And I'm like, well, fuck, I can't do it then. Like, can we do it on the 18th? Because I'm going to go to the pub and get drunk. And when I get drunk, I smoke. And then she's like, no, I've only got that appointment. So I'm like, fuck it. If you're going to do it, you got to do it. I went there that morning on my birthday, got hypnotized. I'd never been hypnotized before. It was the most fucking amazing feeling ever. This is in Newcastle, some random hypnotherapy chick's house in Newcastle. I got hypnotized, spent an hour and a half with her. And she goes back and is like, hey, like, what is smoking to you? Like, there's some sort of fucking key point that we need to sort of identify and uncover. We done that. And then I walked out of there and I haven't had a cigarette since then, over 10 years. I never, like, I wouldn't even consider having even a puff of a cigarette. And it was amazing because I was ready to do it. And if I wasn't ready to do it, then I don't think that hypnotherapy will work. Like, there's a component of the tool, and then the other component is like, you as a person, are you ready to receive it? And I think it's similar. I'm just going to guess, but I think it's similar to like the ayahuascas and the psilocybins. It's like, you have to be ready and you have to be willing for it and allow it. Because I've heard some pretty crazy stories about ayahuasca as well. And I think there's some people have some bad experiences with it, just as a good experiences. And I think there's probably some underlying things that, you know, outside, it's like a nightmare. Like, you don't necessarily want to have a nightmare, but there's something in you, there's some sort of something in your mind that creeps up and you have that experience.
Well, this is why it's so important. Like, for me as a facilitator, I always make sure we have a consult, we engage in conversation and connection prior to it. So we have the date set about a month to 2 months out. And in that time, we go through a readiness program or a preparation program that is more of a psychological component. Yes, there's physical aspects of nutrition and movement and all the things, but more of an emotional component where it's like, all right, you need to be of the understanding that once you step into this space, you are going to be confronted with things from your past, things that are present, and they're going to be very overwhelming and they're going to seem pretty dark. And we'll go through how to process, what to look for, how to discover, how to integrate, how to ask for help, how to be supported, so that they can feel absolutely confident and safe enough in their own body, because this is all happening inside of our own body, that whatever comes is coming for a reason. And these are the things that we're asking for, because we're, ultimately asking for that shift in consciousness so that life's not what it is, because we're unhappy in the space of life. And when we're faced with those things, it's important to note that it will pass. Like this too shall pass is quite a common phrase inside the medicine space. And when it does pass, knowing that there's a bit of gold there for you to take and put into your life. Like if you're confronted with a nightmare, which I have many times, like ayahuasca was super intense, very intense. Psilocybin is very intense sometimes. And it's like, okay, why is this being shown to me? And if people can't get into that mindset, and I've had people that I've worked with and they're like, they simply just can't get there yet. And it's like, hey, we're not going to sit. We're going to do some more work on the self-development side of things, like habits, behaviors, lifestyle renovation. And then when we are ready to step back in with confidence, then we will step back in if we get to that space. And that's super important. People are running off to the jungle to do ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Man, the shamans care and they don't care. Like they're there to facilitate the spirit and the medicine. And they are of the awareness that you're arriving, you're ready to go. Not everybody's ready to go.
Yeah. Would you class it as like if you do some sort of ceremony, is that a conscious state or an unconscious state? Because there's one thing that I sort of, when I stopped using drugs and alcohol, a lot of the reason was because I wanted to be really conscious in every sort of small window of time. And one of the things when I hear about psilocybin or ayahuasca that deters me from trying that is that I'm worried that I fall back to one of them previous vices of being unconscious which is what I liked about like alcohol or some sort of drug. Is it a conscious state, do you think, or is it like a hyper conscious state? Or is it an unconscious state?
It is the most conscious state that you'll ever be in. And the reason that is because you have conscious, subconscious, and unconscious all at the table, and you're presented with life. So if you imagine the book of Courtney Joyce, and this is your book, these are all the chapters. And it's like, all right, read your book. And you go back and you read the book and you go, oh, fuck, I didn't know I was holding on to that. Cool. Am I ready to process that? Yes, no. Next chapter. Oh, shit, that. Cool. And when you go through these chapters in a conscious state, because we're reading the unconscious and subconscious chapters, when you go through in that conscious state, like Einstein says, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it, right? The problems we created in our life are no longer the mind we have now. We go in with intention of being like, if I stumble upon this, I will rectify whatever is present. What's cool about this, I call this the river of abundance. Now, the river of abundance will flow through freely as long as we don't keep putting logs in it. You keep putting logs in it, they're going to get caught, jam up, you're going to have a blockage in the river.
Yeah.
And the more you take those logs out, the more the river of abundance can flow. Now, for a lot of people, specifically higher performing people, they've reached a level of success in their professional life, and they're at a point where they're like, I am out of alignment and I don't know why. Like I'm experiencing these things in my relationship. There's no financial stress because they've reached that level of success where they feel stable financially. But it's the old saying of like, yeah, you can make all the money in the world, but when you get to the top of the mountain, who are you going to spend it with? Like everybody's gone, man. You're on your own. And so taking these people, giving them an opportunity to be conscious in their life and rectify the shortcomings that they may have moved past rapidly because I was so hyper focused on the thing, and returning back to the space of being like, oh, I can see why my relationship failed is because I was fucking 24/7 working like an animal and I wasn't being with my kids or my wife and all the things. It's like, we can come back to that space. And when we step out of ceremony and they're like, oh, okay, so yeah, I've got a multi-billion-dollar company, but my wife left me, my kids hate me. I now know why that happened. So I can show up better now. And the integration piece isn't necessarily work harder, work more, and just be aware of it. The integration piece is like, okay, so what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to create a way for me to step out of the business and let the business be what it needs to be while releasing control, relinquishing control, so that I can invest more in my role as a father or a husband. And this is just one example. Right. And that's oftentimes common for general population and high performers, because we get so hyper focused on working day to day just to make ends meet or to chase the dream or to do the thing. And we forget that the reason we're chasing the dream or the purpose that we're chasing is because of this.
Yeah.
You know, for me,
Yeah,
and I know
correct.
for you, my purpose is my children and my family.
Yeah.
That's my purpose. I want to leave a legacy so that they can grow up in a world that is better than the one that I grew up in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, man, because I had my 3 boys stayed at their nan's house on Monday night because we had to get up. I had to go to Sydney for a dance concert with my eldest daughter, right? So we're on the road at 5 a.m. The 3 youngest one go to Nan and Pop's. I went home from work on Monday afternoon, and it was only my daughter there. And it was like this fucking really weird, eerie feeling. It's like emptiness. I'm like, the 3 boys are, usually it's fucking chaos, right? There's fucking everyone running around. There's fucking tears there. There's fighting there. And it's like, that's
healthy household.
It's a very healthy, normal household, right? And,
yeah.
You know, and what I found was like, I was like, wow, I'm missing the, I want that. Like, I want that chaos. And when the chaos wasn't there, it instantly reminded me of like, hey, this is gonna be gone one day forever. Like, this is one night, but like in another 10 years, when they're 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 and moved out, it's like that's gone forever. And it was interesting because you don't identify it until like you have that, you can experience it. And then they're back there last night and it's fucking chaos again. You're like, oh, what are you doing? Like, you forget about both sides of it. Yeah, it's pretty gnarly, man. And with the conscious state, that changes a lot for me, because I thought that one of the things that would really deter me was that I didn't want to be unconscious. But what I'm learning is that it's the opposite. And it's like you're running at the consciousness, like you're magnifying your own consciousness.
It is. Well, all right, let's play an example, an imaginary game. Let's say that you are a people pleaser. Okay.
Yeah.
And part of your people pleasing tendencies is it makes up 80% of how you operate in business right now. Okay. And we go into ceremony with an intention to discover what subconscious patterns or programs are happening below the surface so that conscious Courtney can identify them and work with them. We drop in and you arrive at a space where, let's say it's childhood, and you're in, and this is a common story, by the way, it's childhood, you're in a household of siblings, parents, dad's like, you know, the classic 9 to 5, putting bread on the table, returns home, expects that mum does all the things. And young Courtney's missing out on all the affection, love, and connection that he needs from both of his parents. And so as a way to find that, acts out and will do things to either entertain or people please so that he gets that gratification or that validation as a child. Now, over time, that develops into an adult behavior, and we do it as adults. And so you go into that unconscious program and you discover this, you process the emotions that were stuck, and you're like, holy shit, I've been holding on to that. I feel a lot of sadness. I feel a lot of abandonment, but I don't feel that anymore. And I'm ready to let that go. You have a big cry, you have a big convulsion, you let it go, you release, we do some body work. It's out of your system. You come out of ceremony and you go, hey, Will, I had no fucking idea that I'm a people pleaser. And I go, oh, cool. Okay. Well, where else is that present in your life right now? And you go, well, right now I'm running X portfolio, Y portfolio, Z portfolio. And the 3 people that I'm corresponding with in that, I'm doing things out of alignment with myself because I'm people pleasing for them. And now all of a sudden you arrive back at work and you're like, oh shit, this is where I'm people pleasing and I don't want to do that anymore. Now there's 2 things that happen. One, the new version of you shows up and goes, I'm not going to fucking people please anymore. And all of a sudden you're feeling dissonance in the portfolios that you're running. And the people on the receiving end are like, why the fuck aren't you people pleasing anymore? I need you to do that. That's what this relationship's built on. You've changed. I need you to be the person that I need you to be. Yeah. And you either go, nope, this is who I am, and the portfolio falls through, or you go, hey, look, this is who I am. I noticed that these things are out of alignment. I feel that we could be better conversing or corresponding in this way. And they either go yay or nay, and it's going to be what it's going to be. The other side of the coin is that you come out and you go, oh, I'm people pleasing. And you go back to work and you notice it and you're too scared to say something. Yeah. And they go and they continue to push and signal you to behave in the way that they need you to behave. and now you're out of alignment, you get resentment, and then 10 years down the track, you still have this amazing, successful portfolio, but you're like, I fucking hate this. I hate this. I don't like this person. I don't like who I am, because we chose not to speak up. So this is where and I was on a podcast this morning talking about this, is creating a plan. And I said this yesterday, pick your fantasy team, right?
Yeah.
Pick your fantasy team before you go into this healing space, not necessarily psychedelics or medicine, but healing space. Pick it, let them know what you're doing, communicate effectively. So when you come out, they're expecting a 2.0, and they're not aware of what it is, but they're expecting a 2.0. And so when you arrive back at 2.0 and they say, hey, how was it? And you go, yeah, look, it was very intense, but I noticed that I'm a people pleaser, and it was because of my inner child not feeling loved, feeling abandoned. And so I'm choosing to work on that now, and I'm going to practice being better at that. And they go, oh, wow, fantastic. How can I support? This is best case scenario. How can I support? And you go, well, this is how I'm noticing I'm showing up as a people pleaser right now. Would love your support in this. If we can communicate a bit more effectively, make sure things are aligned here, here, and here. And they go, yeah, of course, let's do that. And the portfolio grows like this, and both of you are aligned with it. Or they go, hey, look, I can't do that. And you go, cool, okay, fantastic. How do we create a transition plan where we exit and go our own ways? But it's in the exiting that people struggle, because the portfolio is the one that pays the rent, pays the bills, pays all the things. And it's like, now I've got to shift and trust that by staying aligned to who I am, I'm going to be safe and cared for. But that's not an easy thing to do.
I think that portfolio for me was the coal mine, and for you potentially the military, right? It's like,
absolutely,
and it's like when you can identify that, and it's fucking scary, but like, and then you go down that road and it's like, oh wow, now I am who I am, and I can, start expressing myself and without being stuck to that identity. Do you find that like someone will go through like a ceremony and like, is it, and I think it ultimately comes down to the environment, but it's like, do you typically see someone yield them positive results for 3 months, 3 years, forever? Or like, is it sometimes that environment that is working against who they are as a person or their values? Sometimes they might need to drop back in to have like a little recharge. Is that what you see?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it can be tricky to integrate. And so more often than not, the people I work with have life-changing results and long-term, right? And it's in the integration piece that they need guidance. So they either, yes, they can drop back in, because sometimes it does help. It does help to drop back in, either at a higher dose or more days consecutively, because they're just stuck on the brink of like punching their head through the threshold to be like, this is who I fucking am. Like this is who I am. But even before that, I like to go through, okay, where are you stuck? And for instance, a client recently is like super transformational results and like hyper successful, not an issue with father role, financial role, what they're doing in terms of their purpose or anything like that, but the relationship side of things. And they've found themselves back in the identity of being in the relationship that's signaling them to return to the behavior that was prior to the ceremony. And so they may ring and communicate and say, hey, I'm experiencing this dissonance and this disconnect. This is the scenario. What do you think? And I'm like, okay, let's go through this. And oftentimes the person who you've now arrived as reflects back to the other person or the environment where the real issue is. Yes, we are the issue. We are always 50% of the issue, because we need to take extreme ownership of who we are and be like, I play a role. I was behaving in this way. It was influencing the chaos that is present right now, but I'm choosing not to be that person anymore. I'm going to show up differently. It's your turn to do the work. Right.
Yeah.
And so this is where like effective nonviolent communication is really, really potent. Routine and like ceremony in the day. So instead of going back and being like, I now have this new intelligence and wisdom, I'm going to go back into it full throttle, but you forget to wake up at an hour early and watch the sun come up and ground and do your breath work, all the things. Let's go back to that, back to basics. All right. You're consuming a bit more alcohol, eating a bit more sugar, low vibration. So we start to dissect all the other elements and we put that into practice. And we'll do this prior to going back into ceremony, because the behaviors do have a tendency to come back through, but it's in the diligence of the human being who's like, I will integrate. I will work no matter what. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to hold you to it, and we're going to work through it this way. And that's part of the performance optimization piece, is optimizing your alignment. It's not come do the medicine, you fix, go and have an amazing life. That happens for some people. It's a fairy tale ending, but it does happen. But oftentimes not. It doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
Reality is that when you return back to the tribe, they're going to need you to be the person you were before you left, and you're not going to want to be that person. So finding strategic ways of navigating that so that you can be fully aligned with who you are.
Yeah. I have you read, I forget the title exactly, but I think it's like The Surfer, the Monk, or the CEO. The Monk, the Surfer, the CEO. Have you read that?
No.
I'll put in the show notes of this chat, but it's and I actually won't sort of talk to it too much because I'll give a big key part of it away, but it's a really, really powerful book, because it's telling stories from the perception of three different people: a monk, a CEO of a massive company, and a surfer. And like there's some really, really powerful and incredible stories, a lot of which are like sort of triggering me as you're talking at the moment, because it's these people from all these different places that kind of meet and intertwine. So I'll send you the link personally after this, and we'll put it in the show notes for anyone that else wants to. It's a I forget the author of it, but he's a big well-known author, and it's a pretty popular book. So I think you'll really, really like it. So you facilitate ayahuasca ceremonies as well, like you personally. Is that a one-on-one? Is that a small group setting? Is that like, how's that work?
One-on-one with that. Yeah, because like working with the medicines.
Are you completely like, you're, as a facilitator, what do you do to get in? Like, obviously it's like a coach, right? Like, what do you do personally to help in that ceremony?
So I will go through my own protocol leading into ceremony, where I'll like reschedule my whole week to make sure that I'm grounded, protected.
Yeah.
Because if I don't protect myself energetically, I can start to like take on the energy and trauma of others, because I'm channeling the space for them, and I'm working with them hands-on, body work, moving energy, shifting energy, talking. So words carry vibration, listening, and you got to be really conscious the whole way through, because oftentimes I'm a very empathic person, and I really resonate with people in a journey of healing, because it's like, I've been there, I've done that. So it's easy to have compassion and empathy for people that are going through it. And my heart just wants to reach out and take all of their hurt away and help them heal. But at the same time, you take the fate away from somebody. So as a facilitator, it's important that I keep myself grounded leading in. I'm not consuming all the things that are going to keep me low vibration. I more or less cast spells for myself to protect myself. I will cleanse my body, cleanse the space, and everything is done with intention. So whether I'm consciously and verbally speaking the intention while prepping the ceremony, or I'm doing that subconsciously through a process, and even during ceremony, I will make sure I continue to ground, keep coming back out, connecting to the earth, connecting to me, breathing, making sure my nervous system is down regulated, and just really ensuring that my vessel is strong enough to hold the space. That's the priority. If I'm stepping in to open up this sacred space, that's a level of trust and responsibility that humans are giving me. I need to make sure I am fucking fighting fit to do that for them. So really protecting myself and grounding that every day.
Is it nighttime, daytime, evening, morning? Like, what's it typically like? Would you typically facilitate, or the start of the ceremony?
So single days we'll start in the morning, usually on board the medicine around 0900, and it could go for 2-3 hours, or it could go for 7 to 9 hours, depending on the individual and the dose. 3-day to 5-day ceremonies, we will drop in early, and then the micro sessions we'll do in the evening. So micro session we did here. So we got here at 2:45 into the Airbnb, and we got into the space. I cleared the space, and then we went through a micro dose of psilocybin plus breath work and body work. And the reason I do that is because
in that order.
Yep. So the reason I do that, we onboard the medicine because it can take a while to settle in. Go through breath work so that we can regulate and control the nervous system, so that we have control, and then take you into an alternate state of consciousness so that you can really relax and decompress, and then I'll go in and do body work, and I'll manipulate soft tissue to release and just be open to experiencing. Because when the medicine hits, man, sometimes going in can be real tricky. It can be really tough. And the instant thing is to contract, because like, oh shit. So the more we can soften the tissue and work with the tissue, the more we can allow emotion to release, energy to release, and then be in the process. And after soft tissue, go through a bit more breath work, connect with conversation. So connect verbally, face to face. Second day, we drop into a larger ceremony, larger dose. Same sort of process. I use instruments to go into ceremony. I'll smudge as well with either palo san or sage. Cleanse the area. I'll go through blessing the medicine with instruments as well. So creating resonance that is harmonizing with the environment so that the medicine's settling in for the person. And I'll use their energy to do that as well. And then drop in, mask on, headphones on, all the senses are closed down so you become more interoceptive. So you're inside of yourself, not externalizing. Even though nature can be really nice sometimes, it's important to do the inner work inside, not outside.
Yeah, you don't want to hear that one fucking person yell at their dog and then it just,
triggers you, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'll be in and out, and I'm really good at picking up on energy shifts. So if I feel the energy shifts in the room, I'll go in, inquire just energetically. I never speak. I'll go in, inquire energetically. I can use instruments, touch, body work, scent sometimes can be really good. Now, if the person's requesting assistance or support, maybe sometimes it's holding up a hand, maybe it's sometimes supporting their head or their neck or their feet can be really grounding as well, because the feet are the things that connect to the ground. I'll do that. And then coming out of ceremony, create space to talk, ground, walk, sun, get in the elements. Some food, usually like to have some fruit. Fruit's really nice because of the flavor that it brings back and the sugars as well. And then on the third day, go through breath work, nervous system regulation, and then an integration process. So we'll sit down together and strategically map out what life looks like. So we keep the basics. So when I get phone calls saying, hey, Will, this thing's happening, need your help, I can go, hey, you doing these things? Oh, no, I haven't been doing those things. Okay, well, let's go back to those things, you know?
Yeah.
And then we go, and I ground and close the ceremony.
Yeah, super interesting. Is it reminded me of like I remember the first time I ever done ecstasy, right? Like, late teens, early 20s, and you're with like peers, typically with people that have done it before, and you're like, hey, like there's so much anticipation of like what it could be. Am I going to be okay? Is this fucking dangerous? Or like, that's so much uncertainty. And it's like, you're always, but it's really weird, even, well, at least in the settings that was around me, it was, people wanted to help you through that experience. They'll be like, hey, I'm not going to do it tonight. I'll fucking just hang with you. You have half,
Rip sitters.
And it's interesting to think that even like when you're a late teen, early 20s, especially in some certain environments, you're not really, you're not typically thinking of like each other like a lot of the time. And you do hear some really tragic events where, people do go in and their environment isn't that, and they don't fucking ring for help, and then they die. Like it happens, right? But it was that for me. I remember that first experience. It was like I was scared almost. It's like, fuck, like this is scary because I'm not sure how I'm going to act, and I'm not sure. And I think probably a little bit of it is safety, but also I think probably the bigger power is the ego. It's like, hey, what happens if I act funny, or what happens if I say something silly, and then people are going to judge me on that, or what happens if like all these other things is like, and I think a lot of it was like, if I say something silly or I do something silly, and then people just perceive me as that person that fucking that. I think it was trying to protect myself from embarrassment. Do you feel like some of the ayahuasca or psilocybin is like people trying to protect, or the ego trying to protect them from embarrassing, or saying something funny, or talking in tongues, or like just weird things like, or different things like that?
So that's one part of the conscious mind that you just like, ego takes a back seat, specifically with psilocybin and ayahuasca. Like you lose all consideration. You lose
Really?
all consideration for what you care about. You're so
Wow.
focused on the real healing that you're like, ha, my ego tried to make me think that I would care about what someone would think about me. And you're like, you just laugh
Wow.
at it. It's so funny. But it's funny you
Do
use
you
that
carry that
example.
on? Do you
Yeah,
carry
go.
like do you hold on to that mostly? Like, do you hold on to that feeling mostly? Yeah, wow, it's powerful, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And you notice it in people. I can tell in people that have sat with medicines because the way they walk and carry themselves is like, I don't give a fuck about what you think about me. I am who I am. And it's like you can see
Yeah,
it and it's very powerful and I love it. And when I see it, common at festivals, like music festivals, it's common there. And when I see it, I'll stop and I'll say, hey, you open to a hug? And they'll be like, yeah. And then we'll hug and I'll be like, I see you. I see you. And they're like,
yeah,
they fully receive it because they know. And what's cool about the experience you just said actually with ecstasy is, I've been at Bushdorfs and festivals before, and you see people that are on MDMA or MDA or ecstasy or whatever, and they've got trisma, so they're clenching their jaw, chewing their teeth, and it's a common thing that people talk about,
yeah,
and you see it regularly. What I really love to do is when I'm walking, I may be on MDMA myself, maybe, don't know, but I'm walking around, I'll see someone doing it, and I'll go over and be like, you doing all right? They'll be like, yeah, I'm having a great time. And you can see right through it because they're just trying to be something that they're not.
mm,
Like, do you want to sit down for a minute? Yeah, okay. Give them some water. Can I massage your jaw for you? And they'll be like, yep. And I've been in spaces before where I'll just sit there in the middle of everybody and I'll just be massaging someone's jaw or face and they'll go, oh, thank you. Sure, man.
yeah,
Have a good
yeah,
time. Have a good
yeah,
time.
yeah.
So
It's
it's
so
cool.
cool. And you're totally right, mate, because it's when you talk about like it's evident in music festivals and things like that, where it's people expressing themselves and they don't give a fuck. Like they'll wear fucking a rainbow headband and a fucking skirt, like
Yeah.
yeah. And society, do you know the young Aussie Harry Garside, the boxer? Forget his last name. He is a boxer. Fought in the Olympics recently. He just good dude. He's very expressive, young, full of tattoos, in a boxing, very masculine sport, but he paints his nails and wears dresses. And society, especially in Australia, society are like fucking look down on him. He gets fucking heaps of hate online, but he's a very conscious person. He just done that I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and he's like having really
Ah,
meaningful conversations like on fucking Channel 7. And yeah, like here's an amazing example of like a young, very conscious Aussie male that's in a very masculine dominated environment that he's expressing who he is as a person. And is like, if I paint my nails doesn't make me any fucking less of a man. Like and yeah, I see that too when people, they're looked at like weirdos, right? That's like society will
yeah.
say, oh, that guy's a fucking weirdo because he's wearing a fucking silicone vest and he's got fucking Doc Martens on and it's 90 degrees out here or whatever. And yeah, there's another guy that sort of reminded me. There's a guy named Alex Waters. He's from WA. He just moved to
I
Bali
know
and he's
him.
got the same
Yeah.
business as Theo. Do you really? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I connected with him like just through Instagram, right? And then he has
Yeah.
the same business as what I have, and then we're just in each other's DMs, just talking. And he's another really cool representation because I've been able to watch him transform almost and become himself. And he's very open and honest as well. He's like still trying to figure it out. But he's a great example of him being like genuinely, he fucking wears rainbow clothes and like that's who he is. And he does a lot of plant medicine.
Honestly, like most of those people you're talking about, especially the box art, they've either one done psychedelics or two
Yeah,
raised by parents that have that. Usually that is the common thing. Like,
yeah,
and for example, you take when I was training for the run, I went up to Bundy to see my parents, and Maddie and I were running together for like heaps, right? We were running together every day. Now in Bundy, it's a very country
yeah,
boganish town, and then you
yeah,
see Maddie and I, two dudes covered in ink, both
yeah,
of our nails painted, both
yeah,
wearing like headbands, whatever.
yeah,
And you stop and talk to us, and we have deep and meaningful conversations. Now, one, I've done plant medicines and psychedelics, so I am who I am because of those things. Maddie was raised by parents who are very open to life and creating autonomy in life. Don't know if they've done psychedelics at all, but very genuine, down to earth people who have nurtured that part of Maddie. So Maddie feels super confident in who he is, just the way I do, just from two different experiences. But you got two masculine men running around with nails painted, short shorts, covered in ink, whatever, don't care, you know?
Yeah. And I think even, I'd done a caravan trip up the east coast of Australia before my eldest daughter went to kindergarten. We spent 3 months on the road, and we stopped at Bargara, which is where, like, Maddie's hometown, right? And it was like, out of all the places that I went to, that place stuck out to me. And there was another little town called Red Rock. Them two places stuck out to me, but Bargara Beach was a very amazing place.
Stunning,
and then, and again, like, I started connecting with Maddie through, like, I met you guys sort of a similar time. Again, four kids. Like, we all fucking do similar crazy shit. Like, we all have the similar conversations. We all, like, it's amazing. And I think even I don't know his background fully, but I think, like, my coal mining, your military, he was in the police force, like, and he sort of transitioned out of, you know, and now he can't. It would be very, I actually don't think it could happen. Like, Maddie can't be Maddie if he had fucking a blue uniform on. Like, they just wouldn't accept that, right? So yeah, for him to be who he is, he has to go and do these things. And I'm actually excited because he's obviously overseas at the moment. I'm excited for him to come back after having that experience, and then be able to, because I imagine his life is here. He comes back from that experience where he is right now after doing that run that he's just done, and then he just fucking catapults himself into the fucking moon, and he's going to be even, you know, an even better version of himself.
Absolutely, man. Yep.
This has been so interesting to me. I reckon we fucking kick off, like, just continue it from next week, because there's still so many questions that I would love to sort of learn and know about. Even for me, it's like, the biggest thing for me is, like, the biggest thing that I'm excited about is that I didn't think that it was like a hyper conscious state. I thought that it was almost like a vice, and that's why I was always deterred away from it. Because I take pride in, like, not having them vices, but it's not that. I think it's ego to say that that there's not something here that could help. Yeah.
Do you know, there's a specific person that I attract to this work, and the only addiction they take away from this work is they get addicted to self-development. They get addicted, not addicted to the medicine. They get addicted to coming back and being like, how can I level up here? How can I level up here? And I just see so much success in life, not even professionally, just like, you know, one buddy, he's messaged me. He's like, man, I feel so connected to my son, and this is amazing. And I'm like wondering how I can be more in his life. And I'm like, talk to him, you know?
That, I remember when I stopped drinking, I started smoking. Like, I moved to, and was smoking a heap of weed, right? And I was like, but I had to be careful, because that was becoming my new alcohol. I was like, and then when I smoked weed, I was like, my diet would go out the window, and I was like, I think some people can use marijuana, but like, not me. Like, it's not a tool for me, I don't think. But what I did find is that when I was high or smoked marijuana, in a course with my wife, or like, and I think it's like a lot of drugs, right? It's just fucking out of control. Like, just the connection that you have. It's like, all I want to do is please you. It's got nothing to do with me. I just want to please you. Yeah. And when you're high, especially on marijuana, like, your level of consciousness towards that other person is like, you don't get that. It's not a state that you can reach, like, just being yourself. Or maybe you can get it through breath work and some yoga and some things like that, but not as fast as fucking smoking a bit of weed and then having, like, just want to please that person. It's pretty special.
It's very acute with working with medicines like that. And you can get there outside of it, but it's like using the medicine, having the experience, and then being conscious enough to go, shit, why don't we do this all the time? And then, because Cass and I have done this, right? And it's, why don't we do this all the time? And one brief example before we go here, one Christmas, it was about 3 years ago. I had all my kids there. No, must have been 2 years ago, because Willow was here, and I had all my kids there, and I took half a tab of acid on Christmas morning. I wasn't drinking. I don't drink. Yeah. I'm like, half a tab of acid. Man, I spent 6 hours opening presents and being on the floor with my children. And they were just like, we were connected. I understood them. I was there. I was just like, why don't I do this all the time? And from that very day moving forward, I was like, I know how to be a dad now. You know, I know how to be a dad. Yeah.
Wow, that's fucking gangster. Righto, part 2 next week. We got to fucking keep this chat going, my man.
All right, bro.
Thanks, bro. You have a wonderful day.
You too, man. Peace out.
See you. Bye.